Hello, welcome back to my channel, and this is Kuat Psychology. So today I'll be talking about a 12-mark research methods question for paper 2 for the Psychology GCSE Edexcel exam board. Today, I'm aware that paper 1 has just been assessed, and I hope everyone who have watched my video or anyone that followed me on YouTube or Facebook have gained useful techniques and have applied those techniques for paper 1 today. I hope it went well. Just to say congratulations for some of you who thought it went well, who felt it went well, and for some of you who felt it might not be as good as it should, there is still one more chance on this paper too. So watch this video throughout and then you'll learn something. Okay, so before I look at the 12 mark, which is quite long, I want to talk through about mini tips for 2-mark questions, 4-mark questions, and that will be useful for paper 2 as well, and for those who are going to take the exam next year for both paper 1 and paper 2. All right, so there'll be questions on strength, on weaknesses. There are many structures, there are many rules in order to gain marks according to the right structure. But what I really want to talk about, and that's relevant with this video on 12-mark question today, is writing strength and weakness. So we need these keywords, we need these methodologies like generalizability all the way to my last one, reliability, or what the school teacher usually say, grave. Okay, that's the mini form of all of the methodologies. So starting with G, or with my first one, generalizability, every time we want to write about this methodology, we need to explain whether it's a strength, whether it's a weakness. If it's a strength, then we need these sort of wordings, or we need to talk about the population, or we need to state the specific topic as well. So if something's generalizable, then that particular topic, state the topic, be specific in your answer, can represent the population. You need to state what population it is. Is it students? Is it brain damage patients, patients with visual agnosia or something? I mean, paper 2 would be different to paper 1. And I couldn't really go through paper 2 because different schools do different optional units, right? So just follow this guideline, this structure in explaining strength, weaknesses, and you'll get 4 out of 4. But then there are many 4 out of 4 questions. So strength, weaknesses, methodologies we'll use for research. Okay, not for theories, not for explanations for models. No, just for research. Internal validity, when we have this methodology as a keyword, we need to refer to extraneous variables, that are they well controlled or not, and then have examples of extraneous variables in that particular scenario, and say there is cause and effect relationship, or there isn't, state that relationship between the IV, the DV. Moving on, ecological validity. So if this is a strength, that particular topic or behavior would be able to represent real life, and then it means the study is carried out in a real life setting, state the setting. Sometimes it's a task, then what task is it? That's like natural or that's artificial, depending on strength, weakness. Again, then usually validity, I'd say that isn't like one way of explaining it, but since validity is about testing or measuring what the study claims to test or measure, so if it's a strength, then that particular name of researcher, say Jacob or David or Sarah or whoever it is, would be able to investigate that aim, that wording in the aim sentence, usually the first sentence, okay, accurately, because it's valid, then it's accurate. If it's not, then it's not accurate. Reliability, the last one I look at now for short questions and also for long questions, of course, is we need to refer to standardization or standardized procedure. So state the procedure as well. What is that standardized, that same procedure in the procedure that they used in that scenario? That's the same. Or if there isn't, then usually there is. If they give us a scenario, there usually is a procedure. Unless it's a case study, it can't have standardized procedure because different people experience different life events. Then when something's reliable, it means that that particular topic might be memory or sleep, or I don't know, depending on the topic in paper 2, can be replicated to check for consistency in the future with the same procedure you have stated. Okay, so that's the strength, weakness for short 4-mark questions, or maybe even 2-mark questions if it comes up. Sometimes it's like 2 strengths or 2 weaknesses, or 1 strength and 1 weakness. We just need to pick the relevant methodology for evaluating the research. I'm just going to be talking about the research today. Okay, as now I'll be looking at the 12-mark research methods, and of course, we'll use words in the methodologies. I'll read the question and then look at how to answer it. I'll show you my model answer that I written, or that like is relevant to this question. So the topic in research method that never came up before is interview. And then some of you have asked me to go through a model answer. And so I did it. I made a promise, so I do it. Okay, it's on interview. This might come up this year or next year, depending on whether like examiners decide for it to come up this year or next year. But since interview never came up before, it should come up. It probably can come up this year. That's my prediction. Okay, so Professor Oak and Professor Kukui are conducting research into how Pokemon trainers develop emotional bonds with their Pokemon and whether these bonds affect how well the Pokemon perform in battles. As I said, it's a question I made up. Yeah, so it never came up before. It's not a past paper question. It won't come up. Okay, so just an example. And to fit with this theme of Pokemon, I have this Eevee uniform with me today. So, okay, press like for this video if you like it. Okay, not really relevant. Let's continue. So they are particularly interested, they are particularly interested in the behavioral strategies trainers use when caring for their Pokemon, such as how they learn, reward, or rest them. And to gather data, the professors choose to use semi-structured interviews. So there we go. This is one of the types of the interviews that we learn, right? Talking about Eevee. I don't know, should I evolve into like Sylveon or Espeon or which evolution? Okay, coming back to this question, sorry, it's just like me wanting to play a bit. So semi-structured interview is the type of interview. They want to look at how emotional bonds are formed between trainers and Pokemons, how they use strategies to care for their Pokemon. Okay, they use semi-structured interview. Let's continue. With a range of Pokemon trainers, including Ash, Misty, and Brock. Okay, each interview begins with a set of prepared questions such as, how do you motivate your Pokemon during tough battles? And what do you usually do when your Pokemon feels tired or discouraged? The professors also ask follow-up questions depending on what each trainer says to explore their answers in more depth. So this is what we know, and this is the final part. The researchers hope to use the results to create a training manual for new Pokemon trainers, helping them to better understand the emotional needs of their Pokemon and improve the strength of trainer-Pokemon relationships. Oh, such a nice question and such a nice t-shirt. Okay, we know what type of interview it is. We know what it's about. Okay, the final paragraph really isn't that involved in interviews. So the two main paragraphs would be these. So we know what they are interviewing about. We know the type of interview. We have examples of questions for us to relate to AO1, AO2, and AO3 in this 12-mark question. For 9 marks, AO1, 2, 3, each of them are 3 marks. But for 12-mark question, each of the AO1, AO3, AO1, 2, 3 components, is 4 marks. So there are actually 2 structures, being like AO1 4 marks, AO2 4 marks, then AO3 4 marks. And we have like 3 paragraphs in the usual way as we write a 9-mark question, 9-mark questions also have the same second structure. The second structure, which I'll use in this model answer today, is within the same paragraph, we'll have covered like AO1, 2, and 3 all together in each paragraph. And that's what I'll show you today. And that structure, this second structure is usually the way we go about writing a 12-mark question because it saves time. It's easier to structure and arrange AO1 to link to AO2 and then to link to AO3 later. So I'll explain what these are. Okay, in case some of you might forgotten or might not do it correctly in the real exam, like today, paper 1, I hope it went well. I wish it went well for everyone, but just like you guys need to really get this structure like understood clearly, perfectly, 100%. All right, so AO1, Like, since we know it's about interview, of course, we need to write what interview is, especially for semi-structured interview. So whatever we write in AO1 must be, and it must be relevant to the scenario that they provided, regardless of the scenario. I mean, it must fit in with the scenario, regardless of which or what scenario they provided. Okay, so if it's not relevant to AO2, say if we write about structured interview or unstructured interview, and I mean it's not in here, then we can't gain a mark. Since it's an essay question, they'll try to reduce our mark, they'll mark it harshly, and at the end of the day, it's just like you not know that structure yourself in the first place. So here we go, we learned this now, right? In this video, we need to write semi-structured interview, not other types of interviews, or maybe something related to interviews, such as like open questions maybe, or closed questions, depends, that they use here. So there are examples of questions, okay, or the type of data they collect, or something relevant to interview. That's going to be AO1, or including what are their strengths and weaknesses. That's relevant to interviews as well, as long as you can link that to this scenario and then to evaluate it even into more depth in AO3. AO2 apply to the characters, to the people in this scenario. So we have Ash, Misty, and Brock as well. So don't forget him. Might respond, how might they respond to interviews about this topic? So we need to be specific to the topic, not just say like interview is used, or interviews are used, or semi-structured interviews are used. No, not just say they are used, not just say what it is. We need to link that to be specific enough in AO2, and that's the applying strategy. AO3, we need words from methodology, reliability, validity, etc., etc. But these methodologies must be relevant to the scenario, and of course relevant to strengths and weaknesses of interview we provided since AO1. If it's not relevant, you're not going to gain the mark. They might like mark very harshly, sorry, since AO1. And I mean, some of you will be like, okay, I got AO1 right, why am I not getting the mark? It's because it's not flowing throughout the paragraph, throughout AO2 and then AO3. It doesn't connect, it doesn't link. So to not waste time, let's see. A 12 out of 12 mark must cover enough volume, clarity, balance throughout each assessment objectives, and conclusion. Some schools teach conclusion, but I'm gonna say now it's optional. It's just helping you to round off that evaluation at the end to make the structure a bit more complete. But does it gain a mark? It doesn't. It's just like useful to have it to make it flow. So that might be something that separates people who gain like A star and high A star, or someone who had like top in the world, or top in Thailand like me. Yeah, that sort of reward, that sort of award. Yeah. Okay, so looking at this model answer, after talking for too long now, semi-structured interview combines fixed questions with open-ended follow-ups, making them ideal for exploring personal experience. So this is AO1. This is the meaning of semi-structured interview, that it covers both fixed question, open question, the idea of having both structured and unstructured questions together, or like they have many types of questions in a semi-structured interview. Then linking that to AO2, this is Shrewsbury International School doll. I have it with me always in my video. So anyway, in this study, Professor Oak and Professor Kukwe used them to investigate how trainers like Ash build emotional bonds with their Pokemon. The flexible format allows Ash to describe in detail how he supports Pikachu during tough battles, and the professors can ask deeper questions based on his responses. So yeah, I mean, fixed open, not that related to what I say earlier about structured or unstructured, sorry. But I mean, it does cover both. And we can say like in Ash, or in this Pokemon scenario, they used both. Or we can even put in the example of question that they had, but that might make the answer a bit long. So there we go, that's AO2, linked from AO1. AO3, this flexibility helps gather rich qualitative data, which increases the validity of the findings. So words, methodology, validity, here we go. We might just stick with validity alone, strength alone, or weakness alone, depends, but is it all right to cover both? Like, so this is increasing validity. It's a strength, right? But here, however, because each interview can vary, it's harder to compare responses, reducing reliability and making replication difficult. I mean, we have weakness together with strength. Is that all right? It is. It is. As long as like it's clear in our answer. If we only have one, we might need to elaborate it more, have it like longer, have it like clearer than to just say like it increases validity and then say even more. How does it do that? Or like, is it like, how is it good in terms of like being valid? We might link back to say, then what they actually want to test, like the emotional bonds with the Pokemon, they can actually look at this, they can actually test this to see how it affect how well Pokemon performs in battle. If validity alone, for example. Okay, to say like there's like many different structures. The guideline is just you cover enough volume, clarity, balance in all assessment objectives. But depending on how your school taught the structure, how detailed your answer is, that's the mark you'll get. Okay. The method, next paragraph. So I have 4 paragraphs to be like I mean like 3 marks for each. Okay. And the second one, the method also allows researchers to explore complex, sensitive topics. So we're sticking with interview, such as how trainers respond. So I mean that's just AO1. That's AO1. We had the mark for AO1. Then we link that to AO2. So this is what interview involves. It explores any sort of topic, even complex and sensitive ones, such as how trainers respond when their Pokemon are discouraged or injured. Misty might talk about comforting her Pokemon after a loss, revealing emotional behaviors not captured by surveys. This makes interviews useful. I mean, is this, no, this is still AO2. This makes interview useful for understanding real life care strategies, but trainers might also want to appear kind or responsible, especially if they think the professors will judge them. So this is AO2 about like the scenario. I mean, usually we stick to the scenario. It didn't say here that Misty is revealing like having loss or revealing emotional behaviors, but I mean it's just imagination from my scenario answer, but we tend to stick with the scenario they give it. It should be enough to cover AO2, but if it doesn't, then you need to pick the same points that you used in the previous paragraph to use it in the next paragraph to cover that, to link AO1 to AO2 basically. Okay, then what's next? AO3. This creates social desirability bias, which could lead to inaccurate answers and lowers the internal validity of the data. So saying like a weakness of I'm sorry, both questionnaires, interviews have the same weakness on social desirability bias, but say we're covering the weakness of interview in here and linking that to a methodology like internal validity, that's lowered, that's decreased, that's poor, that's worsened, okay, on the data. Usually in a 9 mark or 12 mark question, I say 12 mark question for this question, we don't actually need to like, explain it in that depth. Like there's no cause and effect relationship, blah, blah, blah here. But 4 marks, we need to do that. But at least like we mention, we need to mention the methodology that's relevant to that AO1 we picked in that paragraph, in each paragraph. Okay, so that's the second one. The third one, another issue is researcher bias. I mean, is this enough for something to be AO1, for an answer to be AO1 for interview? Yes, why not? Because researcher bias is a part of interview. There can be researcher bias in interview. So that's like the weakness, but we're just not using the methodologies like, reliability, validity just yet. That's going to be AO3. So it's fine, even though it's short, but maybe better to have like, you say like you see here, the method. It might be better to say interview, or another issue of interview is researcher bias. It's just good to have that wording, interview. So I wrote this model answer, yes, but I just want you to see bits where it can be improved, like, method, what method, issue, what issue of what, of interview, something like that. Okay, then next, because the professors are deeply involved in Pokemon research, they may unintentionally interpret answers in a way that supports their expectations. For example, they might overemphasize the importance of emotional care if that's what they believe matters most. This can affect how they analyze and present the data. After transcribing, that's it for, sorry, my tongue. That's it for AO2. And then AO3, because we already mentioned something about researcher bias that's linked to the scenario. In AO3, also transcribing and coding the interview takes a long time. So we know that it's like containing researcher bias in terms of like the interview being a weakness and so on, linking that to scenario already. AO3, already transcribing coding interview takes a long time. This is the weakness in terms of maybe usually we stick with methodologies, right? But if we run out with methodologies, we say making the method less practical. So we talk about applications, practical applications. There isn't. It's not good in terms of like not being able to use the data. It's not useful. Or actually, we can say there's poor validity. I mean, say if we already use validity, but this isn't, this is internal validity. Say if we already use validity alone, not internal validity, can we use it again? Yes, of course. Why not? Why can't we? We can use that again. We can repeat the same methodology, but just with a different point, with a different AO2. That's all. So actually, this one can be validity. Since like, okay, it takes a long time, but not really. It's like that's bias, which means the results wouldn't be that accurate in terms of having researcher bias in an interview. So we can say it's not valid in studying emotional bond between Pokemon trainers and Pokemon trainers. Yeah. But for say like it's not practical, that's no good applications for studying many trainers across different regions. That's this paragraph. Then the last one, despite these drawbacks, interviews are still useful in this context because they capture the depth of trainer-Pokemon relationships. So A1 would be saying that there is depth. Interviews collects like in-depth, detailed data, in-depth, detailed responses, information on a particular topic. Then AO2, which is essential for writing a meaningful training manual. I mean, it's quite short, the final paragraph. I mean, use most of the time, usually many people tend to run out of time in the end of the essay sections or the final sections that you do in the exam, depending on which section you complete first in the exam condition. So I would recommend completing the questions that you can. Like you go into the exam, you flip through the booklet in terms of like which questions you're gonna answer first. You decide that like within like 1 minute that you enter the exam hall. I mean, not you enter the exam hall. 1 minute that you receive your paper, that the exam started, you choose the question wisely. Which sections am I gonna focus on first? I don't intend to say you skip questions. I intend to say like you pick the ones you do first and you'll focus on what you are confident with that you'll gain marks from. But please just don't leave like 12-mark questions, 9-mark questions right to the end. It wouldn't be useful to do that because when you run out of time, you'll realize, oh, I haven't completed that question. It's like, it's 12 marks, it's a lot. 9-mark, it's a lot. So just don't skip it. Just don't do it at the very end. Maybe do it in the middle or at the beginning would be even better. Okay, so here, AO2, collecting data in depth, okay, it's useful, it's essential for writing a meaningful training manual. While the data might lack reliability, its richness, or better to just say like, it's a strength, so it has good or high validity since it's rich. So its richness and real-world relevance might make it valuable. The professors could improve the study by combining interviews with other methods like observing how trainers interact with Pokemon during battle. It sounds like a conclusion right now during Pokemon battle to make the results more balanced and reliable. All right. So in terms of the structure, we see that there are two types, like you cover AO1 first, like together, then AO2, together, then AO3 at the very end, or you in the same paragraph have all AO1, AO2, AO3, but it might be like, stick with that, whatever methodology you choose, try to stick with the relevant ones. What I mean by relevant ones is you can use more than one, but it just have to be clear in terms of like the answer. Reliability must be relevant to reliability, validity must be relevant to validity, and so on. If it's like the wrong methodology, or I mean, even if it's like not that perfect, but like it's relevant, you can still get a mark. I mean, like it doesn't have to be rich and then talk about validity. It can be reliability. Okay, and then this is something like a conclusion. You can have a mini conclusion at the end. Why can we have this? We already have like AO3, like both like validity, reliability at the beginning. So as I said, it's about covering enough of these assessment objectives throughout your essay to gain like a 12 mark out of 12. And then that's my take for today. So best of luck, good luck on your exam. And then please comment below, let me know how you do in the exam. If it went well, please press like, please share this video, and then please subscribe to this video. Hope to see you in the next video. Then goodbye.